conspiracy theorist has become a very popular thing to call people in the last 2 years, which is part of why I have started discerning the difference between a conspiracy theorist and a conspiracy realist. Because these days, anybody who's just willing to question things, it's been popular to call those people conspiracy theorists. We used to call them scientists, those who, based on a hypothesis, would research things. Now we call anybody who's willing to question anything a conspiracy theorist, it seems. Anyway, after my last video that I did about Katy Perry and Brendan Urie, I thought I would do a little part 2 to that video when it comes to the Cabal, Hollyweird, and conspiracy theories. Hello everyone, and welcome to my channel. I am Ann Blackwood, your Silicon Valley Sage Sister, here to bring consciousness to the forefront of your daily life to make life a little kinder and simpler. And today I thought I would give you a side of something I talked about recently when it comes to what people consider the cabal and conspiracy theories. So, in one of my last videos, I talk about how in music videos, specifically 2 of Katy Perry's and 1 of Brendan Urie's, they are giving us little hidden messages. And there is a very interesting theory out there about sort of the same thing. So I thought, as sort of playing the devil's advocate, I would talk about this a little bit today. So, without getting too deep down the red-pilled rabbit hole, I want to start off by explaining to people what the cabal is, for anybody who isn't super red-pilled and aware. And basically, the cabal, what people call the cabal, it's basically this idea that all around the world, there are people who control the flow of what happens in the world. And they all get together as a little secret group. And from there, their influence trickles down into governments, into Hollywood, into the media, so on and so forth. So the cabal is that top of the pyramid group of people from all around the world controlling the world. For lack of a more, not a better way to put it, but a more, what's the word I'm looking for? A more detailed way of putting it. That's the general idea. So there is this idea that when it comes to magic and mysticism, especially dark magic and even Satan worship, that with the cabal, they have to outrightly tell you what they're doing to be able to do what they do. And so some would argue that people like Katy Perry and Brendan Urie basically mockingly share some of these things, like you could save the world by unplugging the internet. Hollywood is full of people stealing children to do all kinds of crazy things. Some would say that they put those kinds of things in the music videos, even Katy Perry's Chained to the Rhythm song. You know, it's all about people just going with the flow of things in a bad way, just going through the motions, running on autopilot. Don't worry about what's going on in the world. Just put on your rose-colored glasses, take a shot, and party on. And so I've always found this sort of theory that they, for whatever reason, because they're practicing magic and mysticism, have to outrightly tell the public what they're doing in order to be able to do it. And there's a lot of theories as to why, but it's an interesting one to me, because if you notice things like Katy Perry or Brendan Urie from Panic! The Disco, like, these people, they're sharing these messages with the world, and yet who's consuming those messages? The people who would be considered the most programmed by propaganda and the media. So they seem to be doing a very good job of quite outrightly and blatantly telling people what they're doing, and people just not stopping long enough to think about it, to care. And that's really what the problem is, isn't it? Is that everybody's gotten into this autopilot, running their hamster wheel, that even though the truth is hidden in plain sight, nobody's paying attention. It's like something we call change blindness in psychology, where you won't notice something very, very large has changed in your even direct vision, if not peripheral vision, because you were too busy focused on something else. And that's kind of something that goes all into this together, is all of the constant changing of things to keep you from noticing. So, like, a great example of change blindness is this study they did when it through the University of Illinois, where they have people in white shirts and people in black shirts bounce a basketball back and forth. And they have the person who's watching this video count how many times the basketball goes back and forth with the white shirts, I think it is. And in this video, they have a guy in a gorilla suit come out, go, and then walk back out, and you don't notice the gorilla is even there. Yeah. I mean, who would have thunk that people could be so focused on whatever they're focused on that they literally don't notice what's right in front of them, just because they're focused on something else that's right in front of them. That's literally what's going on here, whether or not the cabal is a real thing, which I'm not going to say whether or not it is. But what I will say is that the reason why so many of the things have been able to happen in the last 2 years, over the last, in the world, over time and space, especially in my lifetime, a lot of the things that happen is because a lot of people, a lot of corporations have gotten really good at going, look over here, now look over here, now look over here, now do this, now do that. And so they can literally slip something right by you because they're having you focus on something just slightly in front of what they're having slip by. And this happens all the time. All the time. Like, for instance, just the other day, I saw this video of, I think it was the president, there was a newscaster, maybe somebody else, and they were saying, Fauci was another one, and they were all saying things that directly contradicted what, if you're paying attention, we know to be true. You know, the doctors, the people administering, the people, even just the pamphlet you get or the piece of paper you get, if you were to get the Fauci ouchie, for instance, it'll tell you one thing, and then they'll come on the news and tell you the literal opposite of that thing. And so they're slipping right by the truth by putting the lie in front of your face, and you don't even realize that you're operating based on a lie. And the whole freaking world, oh my goodness, it was really interesting actually, because I just today was having to move my car, and the radio came on, and I think it was the Berkeley radio station came on, and because I listen to that sometimes just to get a balanced diet of things, and I heard this guy, gosh, what was it? He used a term. I forget what the term was now, but the guy on the radio asked the other guy who was talking to a question, and he used a term, and the guy said, I don't know what that term is. What does this mean? And then went, oh yeah, I'm totally worried about that. And it's like, dude, you didn't even know what it was 5 seconds ago. Like, you clearly aren't too worried about it, because if you were actually as worried about it as you say you are, you would know the term for it, because when people talk about it, they use the term. It blows my mind. People are so willing, and I understand. I used to be like this, where you got in front of someone and you didn't want to admit that you didn't agree with them, or you didn't want to admit that you weren't totally on the same page, like as far as knowing information. And so you just go, oh yeah, me too. Oh yeah, me too. Just for the sake of trying to keep the peace or be cordial. And it's like, there's a time and a place for that, but most of the time, like, you're not actually keeping the peace. If you were to stop and go, oh, I don't know anything about that, but I'm willing to learn, like, you actually, in my experience, bond more by sharing information than pretending to know the same information and then knowing nothing. And like I always say in my other videos, you know, it's better to look stupid and be smart than look smart and be stupid. Like, it's better to say, I don't know, and gather lots of different opinions. People love telling you what they think they know. They actually love it more than you acting like you know what they know. Just a tip. So, whether or not there's a cabal that runs the world, that runs Hollyweird, that runs the media, or not, there's something to be said for the fact that we are heavily susceptible to change blindness, and we can have something slipped right in front of our faces, as big and as silly as a gorilla waving his arms around, and not even notice it, because we get so focused on one thing that we can't see the bigger picture. And the funny thing is once you see the gorilla, you can't unsee the gorilla. Like, I've tried it. I've watched the change blindness test. I forget what it's called. I think it's just kind of called the gorilla test, which is funny because, yeah, it's like it's in the name. But, you know, once you've seen the gorilla, once you're told the gorilla's there, you can't unsee it. Like, you can't go back to only seeing the people passing the basketball back and forth. And that's what being red-pilled, if you know what that is all about. And even people on that side of things can get so deep that they only see the gorilla and they stop focusing on the basketballs passed back and forth. The trick to life in general, when it comes to living happy and healthy with other people, is being able to take a step back and look at the whole picture, rather than letting yourself get sucked into one thing or another. Because if you sit back, like, it blew my mind today listening to these people on the radio. I like literally sat in my car for a minute and listened to them. Because these people were literally coming on the radio for like basically a news, it wasn't a news segment, but they were talking about the vid. And so they're informing people, whether they even realize it or not, based on the fact that they're sharing their own opinions about what's going on. That's going to inform other people's opinions. So the fact that they hadn't researched what they were talking about, like, at all, and that's one of our biggest problems, is people just share gossip rather than doing any sort of real research on the things that they're talking about. Like, that's dangerous. That's why we are where we are right now. Like, to be completely and utterly frank, like, the reason why life is exactly as it is right now is because there are too many people passing gossip back and forth, even from the television, and not doing enough of their own research to make sure they have both sides, to make sure that they understand both sides well enough to understand what the middle ground could be, because often there's 3 sides to everything at a minimum, not to mention all the little nuanced spots in between. So, yeah, I just think it's very interesting that in the grand scheme of things, there could be people running the world right now doing very nefarious things and even telling you that they're doing them. And the whole reason why nobody stops them is because they're too distracted with something being waved in front of their face to see what's passing by right in front of their face, just behind that thing that's getting waved in front of their face. Look it up, the gorilla test, University of Illinois. And I'm telling you, everyone, including myself, who doesn't know that there's supposed to be a gorilla, doesn't see the gorilla. I've already told you there's one, so you're probably gonna see it, even if you follow the instructions. But just know that I have been in large rooms full of psychology students, many large rooms full of many psychology students, where I, myself included, the first time I saw it, didn't see the gorilla, and they didn't either. And everybody looked around and went, oh, what? And then we all get shown it again and see the gorilla and are like, holy crap, how did I not see that? Magicians do this all the time, where like they'll pull out a map, or I think something like Funniest Home Videos did it the first time, where someone will approach somebody on the street and say, pull out this big map and say, hey, can you show me on the map, do you know where this is? And they'll give the person the map so that the person is completely covered by the map, and then they'll have someone take that person's spot and then come back in, and the person that they approached on the street at random, like, don't even realize that sometimes they change outfits, sometimes they just switch people entirely, and that person doesn't even realize that the person who approached them with the map is not the person who takes the map from them, or that the person who approached them with the map changed clothes and then reapproached them. Like, we are so susceptible to change blindness. It blows my mind. And so it wouldn't surprise me at all if there was a group of people. I mean, we know groups of people from all over the world gather all the time and that they have influence over things. So in the grand scheme of things, would it be so shocking to find out that these people like actually want their influence to be had? Like, would it be so shocking to find out that these people don't all have good intentions? I mean, because we do. We know that there are large groups of people. This happens all the time. Bilderberg. God, what's the other one? I can't think of it off the top of my head. But there are many. There are many of them. The term the Great Reset. Where does that come from? Like, that actually comes from a real thing. Look it up. It's happening. I mean, even one of the Australian representatives said this is the new world order, and we will not be going back to normal. Like, would it be so surprising to find out that those people who gather, I mean, the Bilderberg meeting, like that's like actually held in secret. Like, literally, like those people go and like people know what's happening, but you don't get to find out what happened in that meeting. So it would not surprise me whatsoever that there were groups of people who run the world who have nefarious intentions. Because it's not a question as to whether or not there are groups of people who run the world who get together to orchestrate how the world is run, how the countries are run, how the states are run. Like, we know this happens. We have our mayor and the city council, and then we have the Senate, and then we have the House of Representatives, and then we have the president, and then we have, the World Health Organization. I mean, like, we elect these people. Like, we know that this is a real thing. That's why I discern the difference between a conspiracy theorist and a conspiracy realist. Because, like, it's a difference between accepting reality for what it is rather than, like, that's, there's a difference between a person who recognizes, like, okay, so this is what I'm going to end with. What I came to realize because of one of my exes is the reason why people like to call people conspiracy theorists is because the people who are like the most open to possibilities, the way they express themselves sounds a little wacky. It's not what they're saying is very far-fetched. It's that usually they're offering a little bit of opinion in what they're saying rather than just stating the facts. And what'll happen is they say it with such enthusiasm that they don't realize that they come off as a little wackadoodle because of their enthusiasm. And, if you hear somebody talk about what most people consider conspiracy theories, and that person is eloquent enough to present you with facts that you're aware of to connect the dots for you and help you connect the dots, and then, shares it with you in a way in which is understandable and relatable to you, it becomes a lot harder to brush these things off. Which is why I used to be the kind of person who, anytime anyone would say anything that sounded far-fetched, I'd be like, nah, please, come on, that would never happen. And I realized that I was very close-minded, that I was programmed, to be close-minded. And when I started opening my mind, the first thing that actually helped me open my mind was asking people to cite their sources. And to be fair, not everybody can cite their sources, and it's becoming harder and harder to do so. But that being said, you know, I find that the more you just become open, like, take the time to not find concepts so threatening. Because what's the harm in entertaining an idea? Really? Really. There's nothing wrong with it. If it's not the truth, it'll fall away. If it is the truth, it'll stay. So, yeah. What a world. What a world we live in. Thank you guys for joining me for another video. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to check out the links in the description. May the energies you serve you well, and let's keep making our way through.